over to you.
Yep, good, thank you. So my name is Daphne Carter. Many of you would know me. I am the president of AFP Nova Scotia for the last couple of years. And I wanted to welcome everybody here today. This is, as Chris mentioned, the first time we've tried something of this kind for our chapter. And it is a learning curve for all of us, so I appreciate that. And hopefully you'll work with us too and give us a little bit of patience as we go along with our first video webinar. And thank you to Global Philanthropic and to Chris. Last week, Chris reached out to me, like all of us. He was feeling a little bit helpless, I guess, and how can we help? And as fundraisers, I think at the core of it and at the heart of it, we are helpers. And so when he reached out to me by email, I called him immediately and said, I've been wondering what to do too. And so like a lot of you, especially last week when we started to see everything hitting, we were all probably thinking the same thing. How can we help our constituents? How can we help our donors? How can we help each other? So I think this is kind of a nice first step. Many of you have probably seen out there different webinars from Charity Village and from all the other organizations that you subscribe to, different webinars to try to help with the crisis and help with self-care and all that. So this is kind of our first step into helping our members. All of our workshops, as you know, have been postponed. The Maritime Fundraising Conference, we're looking at that too and what's upcoming. So you'll see more notification in the days to come, not in the weeks, but in the days. So the board and the MFC committee are working on that too. So I just wanted to kind of pass along something that I learned when I worked at Phoenix Youth Programs. I guess I was with Phoenix for 4 years, probably about, I don't know, probably 9 years ago now, God. Anyway, at Phoenix, when we started a meeting, we used to do a check-in with each other. This would be a small meeting. We can't do it in a meeting this size, but when we ever had team meetings, we would just go do a round table and just kind of check in with each other. And so I encourage you, as you know, we want to get down to business and we want to talk shop when we do get together. But one of the suggestions that I'd like you to take away today is to think that maybe as you're doing your conference calls and your video conference calls, just to do a little round table with each other to see how each other is doing. I think we need that kind of contact with each other that we're not getting every day. And you do check in with your neighbors at work to see how their cat is or how their son's doing or how their daughter's doing. And so I encourage you to take the opportunity to do that, to start your day and to keep kindness top of mind. So you can see on the agenda here, and we have, we have 67 participants. So anyway, we'll share this afterwards. Obviously, people have run into some difficulty. And even yesterday, the phone lines and the internet connections were sketchy too with, an overload. And then, as Chris mentioned, there's some power outages apparently in the metro area here in Halifax. So that might be contributing to the difficulty as well. So, you see on the screen right now, Chris is sharing his computer. And so we have some, we're going to talk, when we just did our welcome and introduction. And of course, I'll get Chris to introduce himself in a moment too. And so we'll talk about some tips and tricks. Chris has been working remotely for a number of years and has some good tricks and tips to share with us. And just a little bit about practicing self-care. And we want you to let us know if you want more of these opportunities. So I'm going to put it over to Chris right now to give a little introduction of himself and maybe get this underway. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you so much, Daphne. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Again, if you're having troubles with audio or anything, I would suggest maybe just logging out and logging back in, or maybe trying to just log in using your phone. There's a couple of options there. It depends on internet broadband, which is under a pretty tremendous strain this week. But anyway, thank you so much. My name is Chris Steeves. For those that may have not had the chance or we haven't connected over the years, I'm a longtime fundraiser and a longtime board member and member of AFP. I've recently joined the team at Global Philanthropic Canada as a senior consultant. And one of the things that kind of immediately came to mind is that we are kind of immediately been thrust into a very digital, very digital online world of basically working from home. And I know a lot of people, this may be very new to them. So I thought for at least our first conversation today, and as Daphne said, we hope to maybe host, we hope to see a lot of these ideally. I'm being told that my voice is a little echoey. I'm going to jump onto my, my web. Hold on. I'm going to use my speaker here another way, see if this is any better. Okay. Is my audio any better using this device? Can anyone give me a call back if that's any better than what I was just doing? Okay, I got a yes from that, so I'm gonna stick with this. Okay, thank you, John. Thanks for the tip. Okay, so basically, all I simply thought was we've been thrust into this new world. There's a whole bunch of new things that are being forced upon us, and I thought maybe what we would just start is just a little sanity check. I'd love to share some tips, as I said, with some things that I've learned from working from home, making sure you're getting the best out of the technology, and really, I know everyone has a lot of questions about their fundraisers, about their events, about their direct mail programs, about major gifts during this period. But I thought for our first session, we would just really talk about how we're going to work together out of the gate. How are we going to connect with our teams? How are we going to connect with our donors? And then we can start kind of in future sessions, we can start to kind of exercise more kind of focus on particular areas. So, These are just some of the tips and tricks of things that I've learned from working from home and working kind of mobilely outside of the office. One of the major keys to success here is going to be to do our best to reestablish our working routine and a schedule. We are creatures of habit, and this is a very troubling time. As we know, it is going to be very easy for us to be distracted. A routine is going to help us kind of fend off those distractions and ensure that we still stay productive and sane all at the same time. So again, just little things like I try to make sure that I'm essentially in my office, if you will, by 8:30 every morning. I do my best to kind of, dress the part, even if I don't have, meetings. I do try to make sure that I still go through those same processes of working from home. Working in your PJs may sound kind of great, and maybe if I'd be curious to know how many folks are in PJs here this morning, but it's kind of a real slippery slope, if that makes any sense, from PJs to kind of just, I guess what I mean, it's a slippery slope. So I like to maintain hours. I know there's going to have to be flexibility because we've got families and we've got pets and we've got loved ones that we kind of have to take care of, and managing of the home, of course, but really just try to make sure that you maintain that schedule, again, maintain those regular hours. For me, what I found was, Sarah, you've got your day sweatpants. Okay, that's okay. But what I mean is so what I found is I no longer had a commute anymore. So, I had a relatively short commute, 20, 25 minutes to work. And now what I found was I actually found it was really helpful to go for a walk to start my day for 20 minutes before getting into my office, if you will, at 8:30, because that gave me the same time, much like my commute would, to kind of process what the day looked like, how I wanted to tackle, what are my priorities, that sort of thing. So again, it's all about just finding that routine and making sure that you kind of stick to it during these kind of times of when everything else is, out of our control. We can definitely kind of maintain that. Really, I would suggest it is really best to create, if you don't have it, to really create and maintain a designated workspace. And again, I know, we can really work from home. You can work pretty much from anywhere. You can work from the couch. You can work from the kitchen if you wanted. But again, from my sense here, and I certainly could be wrong. I'm only just reading the news. But my sense here is we could be in this for perhaps a lot longer than even just what we're initially thinking. My sense is it's going to be longer than 2 weeks. It's going to be a lot longer. So we need to really think about creating that physical space, creating physical boundaries, and create that workspace that you can kind of go in and go, okay, I'm in work mode. That's where I'm going to be. Managing home life, as I mentioned, it's going to be tough, of course. We have, children, pets, and partners. The big thing there is just to really, to do your best, and I know it's tough, but to do your best to set those boundaries, to set break reminders. So I know I find myself when I started working from home, it was actually really easy for me to put my head down and, 4 hours later go, oh my goodness, where did the afternoon, where did the morning go? Where I found when you were in a work setting, there was a lot more interruptions. So again, it's good and bad, but you got to make sure that you set those break reminders to get up and again, go connect with a loved one or go connect with a pet or go for a self-isolated walk outside if you still can, that sort of thing. So basically kind of the idea being is that when you were, in the office, you're at work. And you take a bit of a different approach when you're kind of, all right, mindset, I'm heading into the office. So I would suggest you kind of do somewhat of the same there. And I've been reading and I've heard people talk about this idea about creating a no technology zone in your home. So again, everything's mobile. We can do our work wherever we want. But I've heard some people that are actually creating, there's a certain set. So there's a certain room in the house where we actually don't bring laptops and we don't bring our phones in. We keep work out of that room, and this is kind of our no work or no technology zone. So again, setting boundaries, putting physical barriers, closing doors or whatever you need to do to kind of create that is going to help. It is also really, really, really easy right now, and I think we're all feeling it, this kind of sense of potential impending doom, or maybe the sky is falling and we're all shut down. And it's really without your colleagues around, without your friends, it's difficult. It's really, again, easy to be distracted. So this is kind of that time to really take charge. Take charge of your day, take charge of your schedule, and really kind of take charge of what you need to do, because it's going to be a lot more difficult. Managing from home is going to be way more difficult. We're obviously going to get a lot less feedback potentially from our peers and from our supervisors. Now, again, maybe you've got some systems in place to do that. Maybe you don't. So really, I think this is the time where we really need to kind of take charge of our work. We are going to get out of this, folks. We are going to be back to back to normal in maybe a few months, but we are going to go back. There is going to be a time after this. And so really now's that time to take charge, exercise autonomy, take responsibility, show leadership within your team or within your unit or within your, within your organization. And I think now is a great time to do that, because we have time. Maybe there's projects that, with now some of the events that have been postponed, maybe there's now time for us to focus on perhaps other areas of our work that maybe we've never been able to get to. And so now's that time to do that, as opposed to going, well, the event's canceled, there's nothing I can do. There's still lots that we can do. There's still lots of ways that we can engage, both with our team and with our constituents. And again, I would say we want to use that time to do that. This is a great, so that kind of leads into, this is a great time to try something new. And I mean both new for you as an individual, but also new for your organization. So we have some time here. We have a little bit of time. We have maybe a little bit more time. We don't have the commute. We don't have the regular maybe meetings that we would normally have. And so now's the great time to try something new. And I mean, of course, I'm going to talk about, new technologies that we could try. But I know myself, like I have reached out, and I've had a number of friends and family that have reached out that maybe I don't necessarily regularly see, but during this time of kind of little crisis, it's actually a great time to reach out. It's it's a kind of a great time to again, to try and learn something new. The same can be applied, obviously, again, for your organizations. Now, the one thing I will say is, let's set realistic expectations and goals here. So I think in the Global Mail, they talked recently, they talked about how Shakespeare wrote, some of his masterpieces like King Lear during the plague. And I think that's great. It's great inspirational to think that, but also let's not put that much pressure on ourselves. I think managing your home, managing your family, managing your work, that's going to be quite a lot for everybody. So make sure that you're good to yourself. Make sure that you're doing the best for yourself. And as I said, the isolation blues there, I think my point there was just simply we have some lovely technology. We've got time that we can go out and reach out to those loved ones or reach out to maybe old friends or family members, that sort of thing. Daphne, anything else to add before I move on?
Yeah, I don't think so. I was just going to ask folks if they wanted to raise anything at this point or to provide a suggestion that, we'd be open to hearing something, related to a tip and trick.
Or something, something unique maybe that.
Yeah, something unique that you found that works. Either you can type that to the chat or, open up your mic and or your video and share. Is there anybody who'd like to share something? No?
We'll tell you what, we can go back. If anyone adds something, we can always just go back.
Yeah, so if you think of something, certainly write it in the chat and or let me know and we'll schedule that in. Okay, so we're on our next screen now. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Allison. That's great. I like that too. I completely agree. I find when I started work from home, I actually found that I was spending, countless hours without interruption, which is great for, pounding out the work. But it was hard on the head, it was hard on the body. And so you got to make sure to get up, you got to get out, again, get that fresh air, get a different perspective, and set those break reminders. So even set timers on your phone to say, oh yeah, it's time for me to take 15 minutes. Here's the other thing. Okay, I learned that I used to drink water like crazy at the office. Like it was like a regular break for me. It was to get up and go get a glass of water. And I found when I started working from home, I actually stopped drinking. Like the volume of water I drank actually decreased. So make sure you drink lots of water too. Okay, so what's happening in the world today has really thrust. It's really thrust many sectors, every sector, every industry, particularly traditional ones, into becoming digital virtually overnight. Okay, and just look at what's happening, for example, in the education. These are a lot of the universities are being forced to completely revamp how they're delivering their education now, especially traditional ones that we're still doing a lot of classwork. So we've been thrust into this. And really now is the time. If we haven't done so, now is the time to take the time to learn these new mediums and learn some of these new technologies. See, this may be the only way that we're going to be able to communicate with our colleagues and with our donors, potentially for weeks or months. Maybe, who knows? We don't know how long, but we really need to make sure that we embrace these technologies and really understand how they work. So I've got a couple of options here and a couple of things to think about. So there is video technology, which we're using today. I think it's monumental that we've got 68 fundraisers from across the Maritimes all together for a meeting, and I hope we can build something really productive and a sharing network out of this. This is just being the first session, and we'll have more, of course. But on the video side, there are lots of options to use, and I would suggest, I'm not saying you have to go and become an expert on all of them, but I would suggest you really make sure that you understand how to use a couple, or maybe one or a couple of these tools, because we're absolutely going to have to need them. So, obviously from the social media side, Facebook and kind of the video messengers give us lots of great ways, really good for smaller, meetings, or maybe just a meeting one-on-one. Google Hangouts, Skype, again, these are all tools that I think we're familiar, but I would say, if you don't have an account, or if you haven't used it, jump in and create a free Skype account and use it, or make sure you know how to use your camera on your phone when you're chatting with your team, and that sort of thing. We're using a product right now called Zoom. Now, the reason I'm using Zoom is I've had to test and kind of use lots of different other subscriptions over the years. There's groups like GoToMeeting and Join.me and Jiminy, and there's a whole bunch of them. Zoom is one that they do offer a free version. Again, I'm not a shareholder in Zoom, so this is not full disclosure. I'm just simply saying they do offer a free version that allows for groups of, I think, 3 or 4 to meet for 40 minutes for free. You just sign up on the website. It's super easy. The pro version is something that you can upgrade to. It's about $20 a month.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Oh, I got somebody there. Mute. Oh. Okay, sorry about that. I just had to mute somebody. So, again, there's other technologies. There's more enterprise level technology. So Jessica, I see you're talking about Microsoft Teams. Absolutely. Now is the time. If your company has one, I would suggest, if you haven't taken the time, make sure you know how to use it on your phone, because the phones work just as well. Make sure you understand how to use it on your laptop. Download the permissions or the apps if need be, and go in and test it out. Call a loved one and just use the options. Click the buttons. Figure out how it works. There's a ton of neat things that a lot of these products offer, and I would say now is the time to be able to do that, because this is going to be the way that we're going to communicate with our teams in the future. When we're talking video, okay, I was the first one. When I was first kind of thrust into using video to communicate, I found it very, very difficult. As a major gift officer, for me, I wanted to look somebody in the eye. I wanted to shake their hand. I wanted to be close to them and connect with them. And I found the video very difficult. However, with a little practice and a little kind of patience, I've actually found that the video can be a really effective way to engage and communicate. So some things to consider. You want to consider lighting. And again, I know this is things that we've never had to think about when you did a major gift call or when you called somebody on the phone, but you need to think about the lighting that's happened. I'm not even suggesting I'm having a good setup today, but I tried to exercise the best practices. So think about lighting, think about the background. I'm just using a blank wall. I took a couple of pictures off the wall, and so I have one basically solid background behind me. Clothing. You want to make sure that you have something that you do stand out against a backdrop if possible. Again, I'm just using a wall in my living room for today. Camera positioning, you don't want people looking up your nose, or you don't want people looking somewhere else. Ideally, if you can set it up this way, you'll have the camera directly in front of yourself so that you can really maintain that eye contact. And that was something that I learned when I started to do video. Is I was doing a lot of this. So I was talking, and you were basically seeing the top of my shiny head. So what I learned was you got to stay up, you got to smile, the body position, the posture, all of those things are important. And I think you should start thinking about it as you exercise this. Again, call a loved one, do some test calling right now. Try out some of this software and make sure you get really familiar with it, because again, I really do think this is where we're going to be doing a lot of that. So again, eye contact, posture, smiling, it's all really important. It's all things that we learned about, if you've done any telephone fundraising, it's the same thing. Before you jump in a call, you want to be, good posture. You want to have a good smile on your face. You want to really be focused. And it's kind of the same thing here. So we also need to start thinking about, how are we going to conduct committee meetings with our volunteers? How are we going to conduct potential meetings with our major gift prospects or sponsors? How are we going to do, team meetings and internal staff meetings? I would say if you haven't looked into it already today, I would definitely make sure that, again, if you don't have an enterprise level software, so if you're a big team like Dow or you're a big university or hospital, by all means, you should be using the tools provided for you. Take times to learn Microsoft Teams. It's a great product. But if you're not, there are many free versions that you can use to kind of get around the enterprise level software to at least have some small meetings, that sort of thing. Now, team sharing, okay? So this is, let's not skip ahead. There we go. Sorry about that. So, thank you. So team sharing. So we talked about Microsoft Teams. It's a great product, but this is where tools like Google Drive and Dropbox, and again, Microsoft offers some great tools. So basically the ability to work on things together without having to email documents back and forth. Because I'll tell you what's going to be the first thing. If you're working together with a colleague on a document, this idea about emailing versions back and forth and you do an edit and tracking changes and all of that, I guarantee you it's going to be very frustrating. So all I can simply say is that there are some great tools out there to allow you to work on documents together. If you've never used a tool like this in the past, I would suggest you use it. And Google and Dropbox, for example, again, for the small teams that may not have an enterprise level solution like Microsoft, you have the ability. It's free. There's lots of data there that you can use. So at least for at least the time being, you can start working and sharing with documents. So I would suggest, again, you look at and get familiar with a team document sharing. This could be PowerPoint, this could be Word, this could be Excel, whatever it is. You should start getting a sense of that. Oh, I did it again. There we go. And the final tip is around team messaging. Okay. Now, what I would suggest is, yes, I mean, I know, you can send a group text, but I'll tell you, depending upon what device people are using, the iPhone and the Android situation and what tools people are using, you might want to start looking at a more kind of a universal app for your team. There's some great ones out there, things like WhatsApp. You don't need to have a phone line. It's basically just used as the internet, and it's used as group messaging. I used for a long time Slack, which I definitely recommend. They're free versions of Slack, and then for additional additional features, you can pay for a version. But just out of the gate, I would say you need to think about how are you going to do team messaging with these small groups. This also can work with your donors, though. So if you've got a committee, this may be the time where you want to ask a committee to say, hey, do you use WhatsApp? Do you have the WhatsApp app? Perhaps we should use that for our next team group chat or that sort of thing. So, and the nice thing about it is that it provides a nice log of all the chats behind, and you can log all that sort of thing. My recommendation, again, I know it's going to be tough potentially using new software that we haven't used. I mean, basically, I would just hit your Google and YouTube and say, look, how do I do this? Or if I want to do something like that, great tutorials there, lots to do on that side. So again, basically, I would say that, video conferencing, you need to get familiar with. The ability to share and edit documents together, you need a solution there. And ideally, you'll have a team messaging app that might be a little bit more sophisticated than just using, texting. And again, WhatsApp, Slack, and this group called Twist is also great things to kind of look at. What I can say is, again, our objective here is to create a bit of a virtual network or digital network to help people share information. So we would certainly encourage people to continue to share. There's lots of kind of digital opportunities coming up. The Fundraising Online Conference, if you haven't checked it out, just look it up. It's the 2020 Fundraising Online Conference. It's the end of April, the 29th and 30th. It's a completely free conference, lots of great content there, including a little presentation from yours truly. But there's other opportunities that are coming down the line as well. So I would, again, get really, there's going to be tons of free professional development, whether it's through AFP or these other groups. And I'd say, again, feel free to share and kind of build that network of let's do the best we can. Allison, that's great. That's so exciting. Oh, right. It's going to be a late day. It is based out of the UK, Allison. That's great.
They're all recorded though, Chris, right? So you can access, afterward, you can access all of these at any time on the hashtag FOCO conference. So that's good to know because they are 6 hours or 5 hours ahead of us. Yeah.
So, I mean, that was really it for the tips and tricks for today. We didn't really get into a lot of fundraising theory, but what I really wanted to do was really just basically paint that picture of we need to make sure that we have at least our tools, our technology, and our teams in the right spot for them to take advantage and to kind of launch more digital ways of engaging with our community, with our donors, with our committee. So I'll turn it back over to Daphne. Turn it over to Daphne.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Did we have a poll, Chris? Is that going to be towards the end? Is it?
I can launch it right now if you'd like.
I don't know. That's okay. I guess we still have our other slide here. So practicing self-care. So I really appreciate it. All you just gave us. I was writing down some tips, and I know some of us have shared the tips here. So that was great. I didn't know about the Microsoft Teams. I'm going to look at that and I didn't even think about the part where we can do messaging back and forth to one another. I think that's a great tip too. But in saying that, I also want to think about.
Daphne, sorry to interrupt. The reason that I would say using an app for your office work is if you start using your regular messenger for all your office work, it starts your social and your family and your work all starts coming through a single channel. Whereas if you have like WhatsApp over here and that's what you're using just for your team chat, it's like you can kind of put a bit of a barrier and say, okay, well that's the team chat. I don't have to worry about that when I open my personal chat. Anyway.
That's great. Like I said, I didn't even really think about it that way. So that's a good takeaway. Thanks. So Chris and I just wanted to also remind us to practice some self-care in what's going on right now too. I mentioned at the beginning, for those of you who might not have been on the call quite yet, that we should check in with one another, and I think we need to practice more kindness. And if we do use WhatsApp or any of those, maybe it's just a check-in and maybe to say how are things going instead of getting right down to business. I just want to remind all of us to use the phone. I think when we're at our office, a lot of us, yes, we like to maybe call our donors, but let's pick up the phone and talk to one another and have as much of a human contact as we can. We will, as I mentioned about the poll, we will find out if you want to have future calls, future webinars that would talk about maybe some things to do with connecting with our donors. But in the meantime, let's think about our colleagues. Chris has already covered a lot of the new technology skills. I think that we have a lot to learn there, and we're on a learning curve for sure. And we talked about scheduling a walk in the fresh air every day. And I love that opportunity first thing in the morning too. I thought that was good that we usually, I'm like, ooh, I kind of miss CBC because I'm a CBC listener in the morning, right? And I haven't been listening to my usual drive in or drive home, the CBC and what's going on there. And and maybe tune out some of the negative things and cut ourselves off from some of that social media. And I have too, in regards to especially some of the news channels, which I'm kind of a newsie, and so I have a tendency to, to want to watch CBC News, and I'm like, no, don't do it. So just to tune out a little bit as well, and to participate in opportunities like this. There's so many free opportunities out there, and I know from our board call yesterday that some of the leadership are taking an opportunity to encourage their staff members to use this time for PD time, and like Chris talked about, some learning opportunities, and to maybe take that time, those gaps, to use that productively and feel useful and productive. And part of that is, maybe getting a fundraising book you can order through Amazon, or taking some of these free webinars. So Amazon actually has, and other other places as well, but that's the one I go to, has some great fundraising books, and ones that are used that you can get. And so I encourage you maybe to do a little bit of learning opportunity there as well.
Audio books. I think
Yeah.
Amazon Audio, you can get at least one book for free just by signing up for a subscription. They'll give you a free audio book for free. So again, lots of opportunities there. And Daphne, you hit on something that's actually important. I spoke with the CEO of an Atlantic Canadian charity just last week, and his opinion was, you know what, this gives us this unprecedented time where we're not running off to the next event. We don't have these committee meetings or board meetings, as at least everything at the moment has been postponed. And so he's actually looking at this as a great opportunity to invest and do some analysis, to do some strategic planning, because he doesn't have the day-to-day kind of machine that's running around him, around his team. So I've got a CEO here that's looking at this as, this is a great opportunity to invest, whether it's PD training, whether it's data analysis or strategy.
Yeah, for sure. Some people have just shared about the library. That's all, it's closed, but Yale is offering a free course on the science of well-being. Hello, that's a really good tip. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you, Rhonda. Yeah, and a lot of the museums are, this is a side topic, but the museums and a lot of groups are obviously, welcoming and encouraging people to, to engage. And so there's a lot out there, and there's probably more to happen as well. So.
Yeah. And I think when we talked in the previous, one of the previous slides was about, kind of taking charge. And I think that, we're looking to our leaders, and, we're leaders ourselves, but we're looking for guidance. But maybe it's time that we can step up too and voice what we want, or what we are looking for. I think it's an opportunity for all of us, to step forward and take charge. Okay, so I guess we can go to our next slide then, Chris.
Okay, so as we had discussed, here's a little bit of little technology. So we're gonna do a live data capture. So I'm hoping this worked. I have just launched a live poll for everyone to see. It should have popped up on your screen, I hope. Daphne, is that?
Yep.
Did it look?
Yep.
Yeah. So please take a moment. You can select more than one. You can select them all. But please take a moment and just give us some of your feedback as to what you think. If we were to schedule a call again in the near future, we've got a lot of professionals that are offering, both within my team global, but I know other teams as well are offering to provide, insight and best practice and just help kind of around fundraising during a crisis. And so simply, I see the results. The results are kind of pouring in. Thank you so much. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take this information and then devise our next call and bring in expertise and to speak on these particular topics. So we're basically going to use this as a live survey to determine what our next town hall will be. Today was really focused around kind of self-help, making sure that you get yourself and your team to a position where you can then obviously operate and scale. So kind of like let's get our ducks in a row first before we take any next steps.
Yeah.
So just about everyone's voted. Thank you. I think maybe for the folks on the phone, you probably won't be able to vote if you just called in. I don't think you'll have an option. So these are just for the people that joined on their phone or the computer. But again, we will share these results. It looks as if right now, donor relations, engagement, and stewardship seem to be the most pressing. People are really, I guess, those concerns around how do we maintain that relationship and stewardship. Tracy, it might be flashing at the bottom of your screen. You know what I mean? Like it may not pop up, but it may be a little notification somewhere on your screen. Hopefully we get that, Tracy. So it looks like donor relations, engagement, and stewardship. Followed by that, it looks like there's still a lot of interest in major gift and legacy or planned giving during a crisis. These are both great topics. We will take these as well as the others back to the kind of planning committee, and ideally we will start putting together some programming, for Atlantic Canadian institutions, by Atlantic Canadian institutions, leaders, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's great. In the meantime, I did sign up for a webinar series, and I think I might have mentioned it on the previous slide. And I'm not sure if you can see the organization there, but it's called American Philanthropic, and they have a whole series of webinars set up. It would be at 3 o'clock our time every Thursday, and it actually is major donor cultivation and solicitation. Or no, sorry, that was last week. So that you can access the previous ones, but this week it's direct mail. And then in-person events. So they've got a whole list upcoming. There's like, I don't know, 6 or 7 of them right until April the 30th of free webinars. So I had mentioned that on one of the previous slides. And also as a resource, AFP has come out with a great, you can log in. Now it's an opportunity. If you've never accessed AFP International's website, get yourself set up. There's so much information there, and they have a page exclusively with oodles of links, and that's being updated on a regular basis. So Amy Eisenstein, who we had in, I think it was 2016, our conference, our Maritime Fundraising Conference, Amy was our keynote speaker. Boomerang, donor relations guru, that was Lynn Westerly, and she was here. Oh my God, she was awesome. So there's so many great resources that AFP is helping as much as they can, as much as we as a chapter can. So I really thank all of you for, like, this came together really quickly. It was just Thursday morning that we talked about this, wasn't it, Chris?
I think so.
Yeah. So obviously there's a need out there, and you guys are looking for connections, and we're so happy that we were able to bring the, oh, Vanessa just shared a link. Oh, the results. Thanks, Chris. That's really cool. I'm liking this. All right. As far as layoffs, Sarah McDonald, our board member, Sarah McDonald, made a great document that I would suggest that you could go to her Twitter page. It's at SMAC, M-A-C-K, Donna, D-O-N-N-A. And she's got a 4-page document on what happens if you get laid off, or maybe you have teams that has happened. Many of us didn't ever think we'd face as leaders of our organization to not only lay off our teams, but maybe even lay off ourselves, because we don't have HR departments, many of us, right? So we're looking and seeking, leadership and opportunity. And thank you for coming to the forefront. Thank you, Chris, for offering this, and to Global Philanthropic, and to others who have emailed me asking how they can help. So like Chris mentioned, there's other experts, and I look to you too who are participating on this call, experts in your field as well. If you feel that when you want to help out and potentially, step into one of these webinars, we are happy to hear from you. Any other thoughts, Chris?
Real pleasure, folks. I mean, I think the big thing is let's not panic. It's really easy to get distracted and to look at the news, but let's not panic. We are going to get through this. Absolutely. I think it's really easy. I mean, it's one of those scenarios where it's really easy to just talk about the numbers and talk about the virus and talk about how many are sick, and how, looking at the trends and all the data that's coming in, which is obviously where a lot of us are thinking. Well, let's get back to, let's tell stories about people. Let's tell stories about the individuals. Tell stories about your staff. Tell stories about the people that are obviously impacted by this. But I'd like to put a more a face on a more personal face on it than just talking about the virus and the number of deaths and the number of ill, that sort of thing. So. No. Folks, yeah. We're gonna keep doing something like this, and we hope to bring in lots of other expertise through calls like this. Again, I just appreciate the opportunity to just share a little bit. If anyone has any questions or anything you know, if there's anything that came out of this that you'd like to explore, just, you know, shoot me a note or send me an email or hit me on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, or I'm sure I don't have my links up, but I'm sure you can find me. You know, by all means, I'd be happy to just, because I've been using a lot of these technologies for a couple of years, I'd be happy to troubleshoot or just to, you know, just to point you in the right direction, that sort of thing, or make an introduction for you if need be. So don't hesitate to reach out. It would be my pleasure.
On behalf of us all, thanks, Chris, and thank you to all of you. I guess we can sign off.
Folks, we'll have the session recorded. If there's anything there, we can distribute it. We're going to take this poll and share it with the kind of planning committee. So that way we can kind of target these areas based on your feedback. So thank you so much.
Stay in touch. Bye, everyone.